And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Cannell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson. Thanks to all of you that are joining us live at youtube.com/cover3 and all across the 24/7 Sports Facebook network. Jump in the chat. Say hey. Participate. And while you're here, go ahead and smash that like button. It helps grow the show. It helps let more people know what we've got going on here at Cover 3, where we're just going to keep this thing rolling all through this offseason. So very excited about what we've got coming up today because the transfer portal is always moving, but we're in a little bit, for the most part, things are settled. We do expect after spring practice for there to be one more round of shuffling before that May 2nd deadline if you want to be able to play this fall. But it is time for us to put together our preseason all transfer team. 24/7 Sports is just an absolutely invaluable resource for all of your transfer portal information, the transfer portal rankings, the way that you can track who's there, who's committed in the transfer classes as well. So before we jump into that, I want to hit a couple of news items real quickly. And really, this might be a little bit more of a discussion because we're all watching sports and there's always the nice little ticker. And as we sit here in late March and early April, you see a lot of contract news. Oh, Mike Gundy got a new contract extension with Oklahoma State. Pat Narduzzi signed a new contract with Pitt. And guys, I couldn't help but think, like, why now? Who is coming to call for these coaches? Like when you get a contract extension, then in December, I assume that that's because we've renegotiated based on interest from other places. And so, maybe this is a matter of the calendar year. A lot of times when you do research and contact people behind the scenes, they'll say, oh, this has been in the works for a while. But I think I wanted to at least bring to the table here, do you put a lot of value in the way that a program like Pitt, a program like Oklahoma State, and others that may be following suit here in the coming weeks are going to be able to say, are they celebrating their head coach? But did they really need to give a contract extension to these guys?
So I think it's an interesting question, right? I mean, there's a couple that to me could come out of this. Number one, who is hiring away Mike Gundy or Pat Narduzzi? I think it's a fair question. Right? I mean, do you think those guys are seriously in demand? I feel like Mike Gundy has tried to get every job under the sun since the time I've been covering college football and has ultimately stuck with Oklahoma State. Narduzzi's an interesting one. I think he's a great fit at Pitt. Unintentional rhyme there. But to me, it comes down to ADs are mainly trying to not get fired. And you just had guys make or win their conference title games, respectively, there. Are they the best possible coaches out there? No, but they're pretty good coaches. And for schools like Pitt and Oklahoma State, you feel like, hey, let's lock these guys up. If I lock up a coach who did really well, I'm not going to get fired. If I screw around and be like, I actually think your market value is probably more like $5 million. We know there's not a lot of schools you can really go to. Gundy, you've already kind of played out the job jumping thing. Narduzzi may have some limited appeal. Like he really is not a fit at every program. If I play that game, which financially, like if I'm a steward of our finances for the athletic department, maybe that's the right game to play. Then I might have an unhappy coach, which, if you manage people, it's not great to have them unhappy. B, if it blows up in my face, even a little bit, if there's any kind of chance of that, I'm probably getting fired. So, because it's going to come back on me, hey, you didn't get that coach renewed. You didn't get him extended. The agent's telling the AD that, hey, man, if you don't get this guy locked up, they're going to can you. And the agent might be right. So I think really the AD here in both cases acts in a self-preservation type manner. And I would probably do the same damn thing if I was at AD.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's that much to it. I think you kind of it's a reward. They won their conferences. It's Pitt got to a major bowl game, had a great season, might have the first quarterback taken in the draft. Oklahoma State won the Big 12. I think that it's just really... Well, almost. But I think it's just nothing more than that, honestly. It's just rewards for good seasons. We've seen it all the time. The timing is a little weird, yes, but it's also possible the coaches or the ADs were like, yeah, no, we'll get to it later. We've got some other stuff we want to finish. They might have been working on it ever since, and they just finally finalized everything now.
But to Chip's question, why give them if it's not necessary? You know, like, I mean, it's a reward. Is it just because you're supposed to? Like, hey, congrats. Like, I don't know.
I mean, as long as
It's not your money, though. If you're the AD and you're not paying the players yet, you got to spend the money on something. If there's any risk that they leave and you get fired because you lost a guy that did well and boosters like, you do it. It's
contracts already have incentives. So technically there is a reward. So this is extra reward on top of the reward.
But like,
should the program do it or should the AD do it are different questions, though.
Yeah, but are these new deals, like, did they get giant pay raises? Has their buyout gone up a ton, or is it just kind of like an incremental increase?
The buyout has gone up, especially in the Pat Narduzzi case, because you're built out till 30. Like you're under contract now through the end of the decade. That is
but do we know what the buyout numbers are?
Oh, and the way that they would drop? I do not. I'm not privy to those numbers right now.
That's what I'm saying. For all we know, nothing's really changed.
Pennsylvania has a really bad public records law, so we could request it and we might get it like by 2030.
I don't know. Maybe I'm warped because this bothered me with what played out at Jimbo Fisher in Florida State, like the constant flirtation, driving up the price. You know, whether it was LSU, Texas, and then eventually actually leaving to Texas A&M. And maybe it's easier sitting in this position than actually being the guy who would have your job tied to it and saying, oh, well, if he leaves, man, I would be more likely to say to just say, all right, well, congrats. Your bonus is there for what it's there for. We'll see what happens. Like, football is college football specifically, so fickle. It's so up and down. I mean, there's the more likely chances that one of these teams underwhelm and a couple of years you're on the hot seat, and then those buyouts are going to be really expensive, and that might cost you your job the same way. So I think it's easier for us to sit in this position. I'll say that, like, with a caveat. But you know what's just comical in all this is it was just 2 years ago in the middle of a COVID pandemic, we're like, man, look at all, whoa, wow, tough these financial stresses that we're putting on these programs. And now we're gonna have to shut down programs and we're going to be in jeopardy. And just 2 years later, we're just giving out, extensions because we can.
Because it was BS.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It was fake. These major FBS programs, not serious budget constraints. I think it's the exact same thing as the baseball owners telling us how bad of an investment baseball teams are. Now, if you're a mid-level program that is really depending on the money from the NCAA tournament, and by mid-level I mean like a mid-major, where getting that unit from the NCAA tournament, basketball tournament, maybe you don't play football, or maybe you don't play football at a major conference, I'll buy it a little bit. But everybody getting those TV checks, I'm not buying that at all. I think that's total BS and a narrative that they want us to spread as media.
Okay. Now this is the follow-up here. And I didn't want to make this a whole show or a whole segment because it sounds funny. And if this builds out, maybe we will. But Pat Narduzzi and Mike Gundy also seemed like they were two of the safest coaches around. Like, I wasn't sweating what their future was. And we talked about them leaving, but I also didn't think that they were the hot seat. Like, who are reverse hot seat coaches that come to mind?
Mike Gundy took a pay cut last year, didn't he?
And so this is the Jim Harbaugh correction?
Maybe that's what it is.
If he did.
It was funny because I'll give Dusty credit for this on the radio show. He had a prediction based off the trend that you're seeing. Harbaugh took the pay cut, big season. Gundy takes pay cut, big season. Who took the pay cut this offseason? Scott Frost, Nebraska.
Oh,
11-1.
Best 3-win team in history. Watch out for the Cornhuskers.
But I would put up like a banner just for fun, like in the practice facility, just like best 3-win team of all time, 2021.
That's great.
Love it. All right. You want to dive in? Let's go ahead and get business rolling with our pre-season all-transfer, all-America team. We'll begin with the quarterbacks. Ooh, there are a lot of quarterbacks to discuss. Again, many thanks to 24/7 Sports as a resource, and specifically producer Jordan, who is all over the transfer portal and the transfer scene, both for 24/7 Sports and also helping us with this show. So we've got a couple names to debate right here. The one that is going to be a headliner for many is going to be Caleb Williams, who made his move from Oklahoma to USC, linking up with Lincoln Riley. Quinn Ewers goes from Ohio State to Texas. Jackson Dart goes from USC to Ole Miss as Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams show up at USC. And Dylan Gabriel with Oklahoma now open and Caleb Williams gone, he goes from UCF to Oklahoma after a quick pit stop at UCLA?
Yeah,
Were we there for a second?
Spent some time
Didn't
on
go
the
to class.
beach.
Didn't go to class. That's important. So
that is the Lane Kiffin, Tennessee rule. Remember?
on our old on our All-America team, we are only going to have one quarterback. No A11 stuff around here. So we got Caleb Williams, Quinn Ewers, Jackson Dart, Dylan Gabriel. How do you want to attack this? Because we've got varying levels of experience. Obviously, I would say Dylan Gabriel with the biggest body of work. Caleb Williams and Jackson Dart, partial seasons. Williams a little bit more than Dart, as Dart had some injury issues. And Quinn Ewers has not taken a collegiate snap. Who's going to get our nod for the quarterback on the all-transfer team?
So to be clear, we should need to set some guardrails. We're trying to put together the best team for this year, right? Like we're not program building and trying to build towards 2025.
It's a preseason
right?
All-America team. We are just projecting what's happening.
Who has the best season this year?
Yes.
Then I think it's noteworthy that Ewers is so talented that he makes our nomination list. But to me, he's an easy cut because all three guys who are not him are super talented and they're a little more proven on the college level.
I think too. I totally agree with you. I eliminated 2 based on experience and playing time. Not eliminated, but like Jackson Dart, I would not recommend because of the lack of experience. But I also think there's if you wanted to take a flyer on one of those guys for a Heisman, if you got odds on them having a breakout, surprise upside season, then I think it's a different discussion. But as far as who do we think is going to have the best year this year, then I think it's a 2-man race. And I think it's interesting because I don't know if it's as much of a slam dunk as some people might think between Caleb Williams and Dylan Gabriel.
All right, let's give a little bit more time for all the Oklahoma fans to join us so they can jump in on this Dylan Gabriel, Caleb Williams discussion.
And the South Carolina fans as well. They're probably going to be mad.
Yeah. A couple names from the chat. We got Jaden Daniels at LSU, Spencer Rattler.
That's not a sleeper pick. That one needs to stay sleeping. the Rattler thing I'll entertain as being a nominee.
Would you take Jaden Daniels for just a preseason this year selection? Would you rate Daniels ahead of Dart?
No.
Wow, that was a dramatic no. Okay.
Is anybody else
over Dart?
Yeah.
I would consider it. I wouldn't outright dismiss it. Yeah.
I wouldn't dismiss it either. I think there's enough that you've seen kind of a floor. We don't know the floor of Jackson Dart yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at these guys. I agree Ewers is gone. I think that Spencer Rattler, man, I don't know, that South Carolina hype video, I think Spencer Rattler is going to be good now. I think another name out here, if we're just going to go straight numbers, guys who are going to put up stats, you have to include Cameron Ward, who transferred to Washington State, who came from Incarnate Word, who's going to be in an offense where he's going to be throwing 50 to 60 times per game. And I think he's going to put up numbers. So at the end of the year, he may be somebody we look at. But I don't know, man. I got to go with Caleb Williams for this.
I do too. That's narrowly edging out. And I think Caleb Williams is a better player than Dylan Gabriel is. I do love the fit of Dylan Gabriel reuniting with Jeff Levy, who, he was obviously really good with at UCF. I think Gabriel's skill set is uniquely suited to play in that Levy offense. But talent-wise, and look, if we're going to factor in the relationship, Caleb Williams knows and likes Lincoln Riley pretty well. So I'm going to go Caleb Williams narrowly over Dylan Gabriel.
I wanted to make the case for Dylan Gabriel, bigger body of work. But I think you also have to look at, total surroundings. Oklahoma lost some guys too. They're breaking in some new players as well, where I think Caleb Williams is going to have more talent around him. So I think that's going to be a massive edge. Whose schedule, as far as opponents, is it USC is going to have an easier schedule too?
Not by a lot.
Yeah,
I actually have Oklahoma winning.
So I factored that in as well.
Is Oklahoma still your conference title favorite?
I don't know.
I think they are.
Yeah. I mean, as long as there isn't a concerted movement by the Big 12 and the referees, I think Oklahoma is your favorite.
So Baylor, Oklahoma State, who played in the championship game, were just with quarterbacks returning, a lot of continuity.
I think Baylor's quarterback returning is a negative.
It's fair.
Like that's they're winning in spite of him.
Man, Bud stays hating bad quarterbacks.
Just
You can win college football games with bad quarterbacks. Jack
think
Cluck.
If Baylor went and got an average Big 12 quarterback, I'm much I'm considering him a lot more.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma had a quote unquote bad year. I still think they're the most talented and most likely to win that conference.
Yeah, I haven't made an official declaration yet. Have you gamed out?
I ask you to consider Tommy DeVito then, Chip, former
No,
four-star prospect.
I'm not talking about for this. I've done all the preparation for this. I'm talking about picking the Big 12 like predicted order of finish yet.
So like Okie State has Okie State is a very, very easy non-con. So
doesn't impact winning the Big 12.
Right. No. I think within the Big 12, the timing of this stuff matters as well. I mean, Oklahoma gets Kansas State fairly early in the year. I think Kansas State, may have a little bit of growing pains. They finish at Texas Tech, so that could be tough. I'm still going to go Caleb Williams over Dylan Gabriel, but I think it's close.
Yeah, I think another way to put it, like with Oklahoma in the Big 12, is like last year, the last few years, you'd probably say Oklahoma's winning that conference 75% of the time. Like if you just simulate it, I think that's closer to 60 this year.
I'll take that. And I'm with Caleb Williams, high end Caleb Williams. So much fun, and I will 100%. Obviously, as I've said many times before, I'm drunk on the hype train. So let's go.
Also, it's fun to make Oklahoma fans mad.
So mean. All right, Caleb Williams is our all transfer quarterback. All right, let's move on to the running back position. We are modern in our offense, and so we're going to have one running back selection, 2 wide receiver selections, and 1 running back wide receiver flex. So we got to start with our RB1. A couple suggestions that we've got right here. Jahmyr Gibbs, who left Georgia Tech and will be showing up at Alabama. Zach Evans, former 5-star prospect, left TCU and will be joining Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. Travis Dye, Oregon's best running back a year ago. He is also going to be showing up at USC, as we see Ole Miss and USC showing up again in our debates. And then Montrell Johnson, who followed Billy Napier from Louisiana to Florida, former 3-star with a 90 rating by the 24/7 Sports Transfer Committee. He had 12 rushing touchdowns last season, starting for the Ragin' Cajuns.
I mean, I think Gibbs is the obvious choice. I think to me, it's no different than Caleb Williams. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is just already incredibly talented, and maybe a lot of the country, like fan-wise, isn't as familiar with it because he went to Georgia Tech, but he was a very highly rated recruit who was very productive while at Georgia Tech. And now you're putting him into the Alabama offense, playing behind an Alabama offensive line with Bryce Young at quarterback and with those receivers. Like, defenses aren't going to be able to key on him like they could when they were facing Georgia Tech. So he's going to have a whole lot more freedom to be able to, be a runner in that offense, to be a pass catcher in that offense. I think he's just going to put up absolutely monster numbers.
So I do think it's notable that Florida took Montrell Johnson.
Yes.
Right? Like, I think that's always a good sign for a player if the coach moves up a level and wants to take somebody from his former school. That means he thinks like, hey, this guy was a real stud. There's guys who had really good stats for ULL who did not follow him to Florida. Maybe he thought they were more like guys who were going to have good stats against that league, or maybe he thought Florida didn't have a weakness there.
They also had like 24 super seniors, so there's a lot of exhausted eligibility from that.
That's true as well.
Too deep on both sides.
And I think Travis Dye is a good player, but to me, this is a 2-man race, really.
I'll fight for Dye and Evans.
Okay.
And Travis Dye was not in the 2-man race?
No. To me, it's like the 2 most talented guys here are Evans and Gibbs. I'm going to vote Gibbs because Gibbs comes with less baggage than Evans does. Like, I trust Gibbs to not do not criminal stuff, but like just dumb stuff off the field, get in fights with the coaching staff, like not fist fights, just arguments and whatnot. I trust Gibbs to be on the field. And the reports we've got at Alabama so far are that Gibbs is making some really good athletes look stupid.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to cover him. So I'm going Gibbs. The only guy I think maybe would tempt me is Evans, but I can't trust him to stay on the field consistently.
I'll I'll fight for Dye over Evans with trust being the main word. I mean, Dye's a workhorse. I mean, he is able to do so many things for you in the offense. He has played for Oregon for a long time. He's got a bigger body of work. He's got a ton of experience. I really like that, especially over Evans, who has a higher ceiling, better raw talent. But as you mentioned, has been in and out of, and might be a Gary Patterson thing. You know, the rules might be a little different.
High school too.
I'm
sensing a trend.
I think that when we get into the flex position arguments, I will nominate Dye over Evans, but I am not going to argue because, like you, Bud, I have heard nothing but positive things about the way that Gibbs has looked around his teammates, which of course are all national championship caliber down there in Tuscaloosa.
Another running back name to consider, kind of a sleeper, Jalen Berger, who transferred from Wisconsin to Michigan State. He had in 2020 during the COVID season, he was a true freshman. He was pretty productive in that offense, but for whatever reason last year, he just kind of got, he fell down the depth chart and didn't really see as much playing time. But we've seen, Michigan State had some success with another transfer running back last year, and we know that they like to feature running backs in their offense. So I think Jalen Berger is somebody who can go to Michigan State and maybe find a much larger role and put up some pretty good numbers.
Berger left the team in like mid-October.
Mm-hmm.
That was like that. I saw that as like an interpersonal relationship breakdown. Coach and player not seeing eye to eye. Of course, Braylon Allen then emerges. So
yeah, that was part of it too. But like
coaching staff at least feels like they had an option and someone to go to. But I'm with you. I had high expectations for Berger going into last season, and when it sort of fell apart with the staff and he ended up leaving the program, I've definitely got my eye on him for sure. Would not take over Gibbs though.
No,
I wanted to go Travis Dye. That was my coming into this conversation pick, but I'll default to maybe the greatest coach we've seen in Nick Saban, because I feel like he has a choice of transfers that he could take, and he's got options, or he could tell him no and he could go with a 5-star signee that he could get in there. And then just thinking about it, like best year this season, you're in that system with that talent around you. I'll give the edge to Gibbs. I think it probably is the safest pick out of these, but I think Travis Dye would be a close second for me. I came in here thinking him, but turnover there, you wonder. We've seen other running backs split reps. Is Gibbs going to be the workhorse for Alabama? Is he going to get the majority? Is he going to be a slam dunk, 1,000, 1,100 yard carrier?
I think that he's probably going to be the primary player in the backfield. I don't think he's going to be a 3-down workhorse every single possession because they do have so much talent at the roster. But I don't think it's a coincidence, because if you look at Alabama last year, like, nothing against Brian Robinson, but it was the first time in a while where you just kind of felt like Alabama was somewhat ordinary at running back. Like they had a good guy, but they didn't have a great guy. And maybe Saban was sitting there thinking, like, they had injuries at the receiver position that kind of hurt them really badly at the end of the year. And Saban was probably like, man, I wish I had a Jahmyr Gibbs type of guy I could maybe turn to right now when my receivers are hurt, because he's an excellent pass catcher too. So I do think he's not going to be the primary part of that offense. Bryce Young is still going to be the primary part, but I think Gibbs is going to play a very large role. Yes.
In the last 2 years, Bama has been victimized by shorter, Marshall Faulk type pass catchers out of the backfield in 20, whatever year, or I guess it was 2019. Edwards-Helaire got him a couple times in that game for LSU. And then last year, Dalvin's little brother, James Cook, was also used as a threat. And I think he got him as well in the game in Tuscaloosa. So I wonder if Nick's not thinking, I'd like one of those guys that we can all of a sudden split out wide, and then you got to make some decisions. And Bryce is really good at making those quick decisions, finding the weakness. I think they'll be able to get Gibbs the ball either in wide open space, or they'll find the duck and put Gibbs on that guy and have some fun with it. Like
split them all the way out wide.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden make some really difficult decisions.
He's a really good player.
Yeah. We had him at the Army Bowl, and it was one of those situations where you don't ask the kid about this because it's rude, but in your head, you're like, is he going to go to Georgia Tech?
Why?
Like, really?
Well, he and Jeff Sims,
talent-wise,
like,
they bought
that's what
in.
tipped us up.
They did.
Like,
Yeah.
that's what sent all of us to the Jeff Collins, like, here we go. He's changing things right now. Then Jeff Sims has not developed, and Jahmyr Gibbs is out the door. And if you wonder why the Georgia Tech stock meter is dropping, it's because all those things we were excited about have not played out as expected. By the way, I love when I don't think he's actually said this specifically, but I love when Nick lies to us about a player like Jahmyr Gibbs. Well, he clearly comes from a quality program. He's been playing against quality players, and it's good to have somebody like that for our young people here on this roster. All right, wide receivers.
He was pumping up the ACC. Let's go.
Wide receivers. Well, we got Mario Williams, who also, like Caleb Williams, no relation, and Lincoln Riley, making the move from Oklahoma to USC. Texas brings in a productive player from Wyoming. Wyoming has seen a lot of transfer action. Isaiah Neyor, Jermaine Burton, Georgia to Alabama. The Jamison Williams Express continues as Alabama goes out and finds immediately a new alpha at the wide receiver position. Burton, former 4-star prospect, a 94 rating from the 24/7 Sports Transfer Committee, 8 touchdowns in the last 2 seasons at Georgia. Jaden Hazelwood, his name pops up as it has 4 years here on this podcast. Ever since he was coming out of camps, Barton loved him. Bud, I guess you were in on big Hazelwood guy early on. We talk about him every offseason, and
he really did a lot of the lonely work. Like he would bust it, like even when the cameras weren't on him, and I like that, especially at receiver.
Jaden Hazelwood's going to be at Arkansas, coming from Oklahoma, and then Tavion Robinson, Virginia Tech to Kentucky, a former 4-star prospect with an 88 rating by the transfer committee. So let's start with trying to find our 1 and 2 out of this group.
Can I say something real quick? Just responding to what Bud just said, because what he said I think is extremely valuable, especially when you're talking about receivers. Like, do you know how many times, and this is like you get to know your personnel as a quarterback, whether it was at Florida State or in the NFL, and you've got, everybody kind of knows where the ball is supposed to go. Like if you're in the main progression, but as a quarterback, as you get older, and this happened my senior year much more than my junior year, and later in my career. And for me, it was a lot of times it was in practice, because then you talk about guys who turn it off. But like as a quarterback, you start to see, all right, I might have a matchup on the backside here that's man press that I want to take a shot at the fade, and that's the route that's in the playbook. But it's the offside. It's not where you're supposed to be reading things out. And you go to throw that route, and like where the guy is supposed to be. And you can tell he's like, oh crap, the ball's coming my way. And like he all of a sudden starts running. So you have to like get to this position where there were some guys you knew they were always good count on. Like this guy is going to be there. I don't have to remind him. Other times, like it was so annoying because you'd always have to be like, hey, you never know. Like this could come your way. Don't take off this play. Keep giving it to me. And the worst part about it is sometimes those guys would think that means, okay, I'm getting the ball this time. And you go up to the line of scrimmage and it's not there. Like the guy's off or the coverage doesn't give it to you. So like those little things when you're looking at film and sometimes you can pick up on, man, those are valuable. Like, and you don't understand it sometimes if you're just watching from far or you're just seeing the guy that catches the ball all the time when half the time he's loafing when he's not in the play. And you can catch them with their pants down sometime.
You know where I look for it in recruiting camps? So typically you go stretch, flexibility, individual work, which is cones and drills, transitions, footwork, handwork for linemen, and then everybody knows you go 1-on-1s, and then you go 7-on for the skill guys. A lot of these skill guys, they conserve their energy and dog the hell out of it in the indie period, and then they try to save it up for 1-on-1s, which. Okay, like I understand the sentiment there, but Hazelwood was a guy who would go hard through all the indie drills and was like actually trying to work to get better as well. From my experience seeing him in camp, I mean, I can't comment on every camp I ever went to, but it just stuck out in my mind that he was doing that. And I saw him play on a 7-on team that he wasn't even a member of, and like losing bothered him. I was like, man, that's kind of like most of these guys. Cool, I get a trip down to Miami, probably paid for by the sponsor or whatever of the 7-on team. It's not even your 7-on team, but like you're busting it and getting mad when you guys lose. A lot of kids wouldn't care. It's like, I'm not even on this team. They just picked me up. You know what I mean? So it just kind of stuck with me a little bit.
That sounds like someone Sam Pittman is going to love to coach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Football guys, competitors. All right. Who's our alpha? Who's our 1 and 2 that we want here from at the wide receiver position?
For me, my number one is Jermaine Burton. I think Jermaine Burton is an incredibly talented player who was in an offense that didn't really utilize it all that well. And I think that going from Georgia to Alabama, we're going to see him his numbers are going to pop a little more than they have. So for me, that's going to be my number one. My number two, I like Hazelwood for a lot of the reasons you guys have said.
I like Hazelwood a lot too. But
do you
go
like
ahead, Danny.
quarterback?
Yeah, of course we like. Oh, yes. If Treylon Burks can put up big numbers, if Treylon Burks can put up all conference numbers, then Hazelwood can too.
I like that offense
Mm-hmm.
and what that offense does for QBs, whether they're good or bad. Oftentimes we don't know that they're bad because,
They got creative with Treylon Burks. Like they moved him around, I don't know. That would be a concern for mine. Not a play. Like he definitely deserves to be on this list, but I would probably lean towards Burton or Williams. The Neor thing, Wyoming to Texas, just a lot of question marks for me. With quarterback, Texas in general. How is the Sark experiment going to work out year 2? It's just for me, it's not on the list. I am a little bit disappointed because there's a player on here who put this list together. Was this Jordan that put this list together?
Yeah.
Or was it
Jordan.
Like, how we can't have the transfer portal king who has already taken advantage of the portal a couple times and is going to play for a quarterback in Hendon Hooker who had 31 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. One Brew McCoy. But how he is not on this list from Jordan is like how I have to really test his fandom for Tennessee if he doesn't propose that as one of the top transfer options. I'm just shocked that it's not on there. I'm a little disappointed in him. I was gonna maybe go Brew McCoy, but I'll stay away from that and go with one of those two.
I actually want to vote for Isaiah. Like I think it's Burton and Isaiah. And the main thing is we talked about the private chat's popping.
Yeah.
So Wyoming's offense was pretty much hot trash in recent years, and he was super productive despite those offensive limitations. The main reason I want to vote for him is the feedback I got from college coaches I trust were like, Tennessee just got an absolute steal when he had committed to Tennessee. And then same feedback was, oh my God, Stark stole this guy. Like he's a big time player. So I almost had him as my number one. And maybe I'm missing on that. Maybe I'm over trusting those guys that I was texting with. But like I'm gonna mix it up. I'm gonna go Burton and Isaiah, even though I do like Hazelwood. Maybe I'll save Hazelwood for my flex vote.
Going back to QBs, Levi Williams, who also transferred to Wyoming, is somebody I consider a sleeper because going to Utah State is going to be in a similar kind of conference problem. And I just thought he was a really good player.
Blake does a good job of quarterbacks up there, Blake Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
So does Chip need to cast a deciding vote here? Or I think it's 2-1, right?
Well, Burton's in.
Burton's unanimous.
Yeah, Burton's unanimous. Yeah, I'm going to go Burton and Hazelwood here. I'm a little bit light on Mario Williams. I need to sharpen that up in terms of, feeling as confident as people around USC feel, feeling as confident as everybody else seems to feel around here in terms of what he can be, especially with the familiarity with the system, with the familiarity with the quarterback. It does feel as though he's going to explode, but there's even with the loss of the best wide receiver on the team, with the loss of Brew McCoy, like there's still dudes in that wide receiver room at USC. It's possible he could get sort of lost in the mix, depending on what Taj Washington does. I think Gary Bryant's going to be really, really good. I think that there's just a lot of competition there. I think that clearly Hazelwood at Arkansas has the potential to be the number one target and the number one wide receiver. So I'm going Burton and Hazelwood.
Woohoo, I win.
But we can fight for Isaiah Neyor and the flex spot.
I like it. This next one's going to be a battle, though.
What?
Because we probably should include tight ends in our flex, right? Like maybe there's somebody who doesn't win tight end who maybe want to vote for our flex spot.
Oh, okay. All right, I'm not voting for Jaleel Billingsley.
Same.
Sorry.
It's like when you say, when we're doing the NFL draft stuff, like when there's a red flag and you just say, like, I'm not going to touch it.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it feels like for me. It's just a massive red flag. And I hope we're wrong. Like, I love to see a player, go find a second chance. But man, can't make it work there.
Big opportunity and did not. I mean, literally dropped it. You had a big opportunity. It was right here. Bryce Young threw it to you, and you literally dropped it. Not just in that game, but clearly the way that Nick Saban talked about.
But now, like the other side of it is, Nick Saban's coaching style, the stress, the pressure that you're put under there. Sark is completely different, at least from my interactions with both of them. Like, he's more laid back, like he's California cool. Like, hey, let's come here. Maybe he excels there. But again, it kind of goes back a lot of question marks at Texas, where and combine that with Nick Saban repeatedly calling him out, benching him, trying to use every bit of motivation to get the most out of him, and then he's just like, peace out. I don't know. That's a do not touch for me.
Yeah, does the Sark culture there at Texas, and I'm not knocking it, but I think it's probably fair to assume it's not quite as strong as Saban's culture.
No.
If you're betting on Billingsley, you're betting on Billingsley sort of maturing due to the fact that he needs a second chance, as opposed to Texas being able to get him to that spot, I think.
Oh, like a self-motivated. Like, you are betting on Billingsley.
And I'm not betting on that. Like, what I saw at those recruiting camps, the opposite of Hazelwood. Like, totally. Sorry for whacking the mic there.
No, the mic deserved it.
Yeah, like, does he go chip on the shoulder? By the way, there was another player that did that that's dropping in the draft. I don't know if you guys saw Darion Kendrick's draft profiles. He's been dropping somewhat. This player left, he won a championship and he was part of it with Georgia, but similar kind of deal where I probably wouldn't have taken him the year before.
Oh, he was always in the doghouse with Dabo.
Constantly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, so Stogner tight end, no debate.
No, I'm taking Michael Trigg.
Oh, sick. All right.
I read
USC to Ole Miss.
Yeah, Bill Connolly wrote today. He tweeted it. A really long story, really good story about analytics and football. And Lane Kiffin's featured in it and interviewed and quoted in it. And one of the quotes from Lane Kiffin said, he's like, analytics aren't just like, should you go for a 2? It's like when you're looking at a transfer, like the way he attacks a transfer portal. Do you want to get the excellent blocking tight end who could, really set the edge for you and help you get a 4-yard gain? Or would you rather get the tight end that maybe can't block, but he can provide a 20-yard explosive play for your offense? I'm going to take Michael Trigg because I know exactly how Lane Kiffin plans to use him.
Today's game, are you kidding me? If you would have said that 15 years ago, or if you asked Jimbo Fisher about that, he probably has a different take on that one. But I think it is smart. You'd sacrifice some in the pass blocking scheme in order to get the big play when he's out in a route. You can build routes around that to kind of minimize the impact a poor pass blocking tight end has. And with the rules, the way they're set up, man, I totally agree with him.
Jack Nicklaus wore one more glove than his grandson did playing football. Nick O'Leary.
Trigg is loved it.
I remember seeing the
I'm going to go
too.
Stogner.
Lane Kiffin, I think I've told you guys this story before. When he was at FAU, and I'd heard about the book that he's talking about that this consulting company puts out and Taylor makes them. He showed me the book. I mean, he goes by, he's got a guy that follows him around in the staff around or up in the, wherever it is. He's got a guy constantly with the notebook. It's thick. It's, a 3-ring binder, and it's got situational, everything. What are you supposed to do? It's like having a cheat card at the blackjack table. Tell me what to do. And where I agree with Jimbo is you don't have to do it every time, but I don't think Lane does. But I think a majority of the time he's going to go with what he's supposed to do.
So we're actually going to have the guys who make that book on the show this summer as a guest.
Nice.
So shout out Mike Bursick and Micah McRoberts. They run Championship Analytics. And I'm pretty sure that's the book you're talking about because almost all the teams out there use it. I see those guys every year at the convention. Really smart dudes, obviously. I'm excited to talk to them also about like the challenges of taking that information and distilling it down to something. I don't want to say like the coaches can understand because that's not it. It's like the coaches can intuit and then also pass on to their players and the people who work underneath them. So I haven't read Bill's piece yet. I was G-chatting with him about it a couple days ago. So I'm excited to. Old SB Nation days. We're still on the G-chat,
Oh, sorry, I haven't seen the finished product. I was in the studio working on it with
I'm excited about it. I'm going to go Stogner though here for like to bring this back to tight ends because I think first of all, he's much more proven. And if he had not struggled with some injuries there at Oklahoma, I think that he would have even bigger numbers. But, 47 career catches in 3 years versus 7 in 1. There's no doubt Trigg is talented. I think this is a hard vote. But also Stogner and Rattler are a pretty proven connection. Not that Dart and Trigg are not, but I'm going to go Stogner, I think.
Stogner also then would have been there with Beamer, because that's the Rattler-Beamer connection, was being on the offensive staff there for that 2019 season.
Shout out to the College Football Daily Pod, who had Shane Beamer on yesterday with our Brandon Marcello of 24/7 Sports. He was talking about how they're running a lot of the same plays for Rattler that Oklahoma ran, just changing the names.
Well,
but they're not going to call it Boomer anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to call it Cocky. That's
it.
All right. So Stogner gets, is that it? Stogner gets the tight end?
No, I think Trigg got voted for. Who voted for Trigg? Tom, for sure.
I voted for Trigg.
I was up between those two. I'll go Stogner because I do trust Spencer Rattler more. A little bit, how did they build on the momentum from last year? Gamecock fans should be excited. They're very excited, but I'm not a huge Spencer Rattler fan, but I think he's a massive upgrade from the GA with his clipboard and then all of a sudden with his helmet. I think
Zeb.
Yes, it's got to be better than that.
All right. What about, before we go to break, what about Trigg against Mario Williams against Travis Dye?
Zach Evans.
I would go Travis Dye. I'm still
Zach
a Travis
Evans,
Dye fan.
I would go Zach Evans.
So this is kind of an upside spot, right? I feel like we got pretty good players. I'm going to bet on the upside here and go. Man, Zach Evans is really talented, like Willis McGahee type talented.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go Zach. I'm gonna join Tom. I'm gonna go Zach Evans. Let's roll the dice here and bet on the talent.
That's right.
Cool.
We feel like we've got a good enough culture in our locker room that we could fit Zach in
on
there.
our all transfer team.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's what we got so far. Caleb Williams at quarterback. We've got Jahmyr Gibbs and Zach Evans at running back. We've got Jermaine Burton and Jaden Hazelwood at wide receiver. And we've got Austin Stogner at tight end. More of our preseason all transfer team next. Turning our attention to the trenches as we look where the games are won. We've got this split up into tackles and interior offensive line. So we'll start on the offensive side of the ball. Who nominations for tackles? We got a couple in here. Mason Brooks, Raekwon McNeil, Tyler Steen, Kingsley Suamatea?
Yeah.
Okay. Or BYU for Suamatea. Currently uncommitted Tyler Steen coming out of Vanderbilt. He's got offers from Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee, and more. Mason Brooks. Hey, Ole Miss, you're back from Western Kentucky to Ole Miss. And then Raekwon O'Neal from Rutgers to UCLA.
I mean, I've never seen Mason Brooks, or at least paid close enough attention to him to really have an opinion, especially because in that Western Kentucky offense last year, he didn't really have to block for very long because the ball was snapped and it was very quickly out of there. I really liked Raekwon O'Neal at Rutgers from what I saw of him. He was an honorable mention all Big Ten. So I think maybe taking that step up to a higher program in UCLA on the West Coast might be good for his future. And I did like Kingsley Suamatea. I mean, as a recruit, he didn't play last year, but he was a highly rated recruit. So if I'm looking at these guys just based on talent and then based on what I've seen, those are the two spots I'm going.
I'm going to agree on Kingsley. Sorry, go ahead, Danny.
No, go ahead.
I'm going to go agree on Kingsley. Like upside wise, I think he's the highest here. Like the guy's really athletically pretty special for a tackle. And then I want Tyler Steen. Like
nothing wrong with him, just maybe not a good fit.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And maybe he's tapped out. He's realized, hey, like I've done all I can do at this program. Let me see if I can go enjoy some fruits of my labor somewhere else. With Kingsley, I would have had him off the board because we haven't, same thing we talked about with the quarterbacks. Like haven't seen him play yet. He might have all the talent in the world. So Any love for O'Neal here from Rutgers going to UCLA?
Yeah, no, I like him. He's on. He's one of my two choices. He was honorable mention in the conference last year, and it's like that Rutgers offensive line was not great overall. Like, there's not a ton of talent on there, but I felt like he was one of the better players on it. Yes,
I tell you, you got to be kind of tough too to play for.
I mean,
Shiano,
being
like
offensive lineman in the SEC, offensive lineman in the Big Ten. I mean, my big dumb brain is very happy to look at your 23 starts and your 33 starts at high level competition and be like, I don't know, I'm going to take Steen and O'Neal.
Yep.
I would have O'Neal last by a good bit, but that's
Ooh,
just my
really?
opinion. Yeah, I know some schools that are pretty needy for tackles who were not impressed. Like, I think Mason Brooks was somebody that, like, schools I consider good schools, they wanted
him.
Are you in on Steen?
Yes.
All right, Steen's our one that we've got full support on. So that means we just need to decide the other one.
I'll trust Bud and go with Brooks. Put him on there. Steen and Brooks.
Well, I think Kingsley's the most talented.
See, I don't want to touch that. I don't know.
He didn't really play last year, transferred. I think he's more of a multi, like a down the line thing.
Yeah. All right, so Steen and Brooks. Ole Miss,
I like that.
all over this.
Or we can flip a coin if we want. I mean,
we're two
people, like
two.
different people have way different opinions on O'Neal.
I liked him.
I'll
go with Steen. That's fine. Because I can't vote for Mason Brooks when I never really paid attention to him. You know what I mean? So at least I've seen Steen play.
So we've got Steen as one. We still need to decide the other one. Our nominees are Brooks.
Kingsley.
Oh, okay, Kingsley.
Yeah, I think so. He's I mean, he didn't play last year at Oregon, but he's young. Like, a lot of young players don't get to play right away at the offensive line. It's not really a position where a lot of guys just step right in and are ready to go.
He was definitely a guy who liked the recruiting process, but I think he'll focus in probably better at BYU and get on it.
We're running behind, but what does liked the recruiting process mean?
Like, sometimes you can you got to keep the main thing, right? And the Instagram, the TikTok, and the dancing and all this stuff is fine, but you still got to focus on the football.
I think that's a massive problem, by the way, too. I think way too many players start to fall in love with the attention, with the likes, recruiting is great. It's a ton of fun. I mean, you got to get de-recruited once you get on campus, because you're like, oh, I got to get coached and coached hard. And that's the rough dynamic. That's why I think we see a lot of players transfer after 1 year.
I would say there's less de-recruiting now, though, Danny, because previously, like in the Urban Meyer time, Urban Meyer could just lie to all these kids nonstop. And then they didn't really have any recourse when they got on campus. Like, he's the one that was interviewed about de-recruiting and used the term.
Right.
Nowadays, you can't just tell fantastic lies to these kids nonstop and then, like, on campus, surprise, because they'll just transfer immediately.
All right, let's go to interior offensive line. Let's start with just nominations. Osiris Torrance. Like, I'll go ahead and throw his name up there as probably my first vote, like where I would put my first place vote. He was at Louisiana with Billy Napier. He's making this move. Louisiana had a tremendous offensive line. It was a huge part of everything that they did. They looked like a power conference offensive line. They played like a power conference offensive line. And in the Sun Belt, it was a difference maker. Torrance was a stud for a long time. I like his potential to be very, very effective and a key piece of what the Gators do.
Yeah, I agree.
Really? So we get two of these or one?
Two.
We get two.
Okay, because I would nominate Olawatimi.
Yes, that's my other nomination.
He's my no doubter.
Going to play at Michigan, where you're going to be able to grind it out in the ground and excel. I think those would be my two.
And also,
there's a couple guys who transferred out of UVA.
Yeah,
and I feel like I had a very good line on to which ones actually were good and which ones the staff had to work around. And Victor was the guy that they were like, yeah, he's really good. The other guys, I'm not so sure about.
I feel like this is easy, honestly. It's Olawatimi and Torrance.
Okay.
Don't you think, like, Napier's coached in the SEC? I think he would not waste a scholarship on a guy who doesn't believe can play in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Especially along lines.
And that line, I mean, I know it was a Sun Belt, but like you were saying, Chip, that line just mauled people.
Yes, without a doubt.
Yeah.
They've got at least one guy who'll be going in the NFL draft this year.
All right. So do we need one more interior offensive lineman then?
Nah.
But
I think
this
two is
got a
good,
4-man offensive line.
I'll play center. It's fine.
Well, hold up. We could just nominate kind of a swing O lineman if we want, because we have. Do we want to go one of the tackles or one of the guards?
Oh yeah, you could go back to we had a tougher time with the tackles.
Oh, and then we would be able to bring in
Tom likes O'Neal.
One of his guards could move over. Snap that rock.
I liked McCade Matauer at Cal. Very limited in what I saw of him, but I mean, he's reliable. He's not great. He's not going to be making any all conference teams or doing anything like that, but he knows his job and he does it.
I can get on board with that. But Trayvon Shorts is pretty good too, the LSU guy.
See, I'd never seen Tremont, so I couldn't tell you.
He was an FCS All-American. This is tough. There's a lot of good. Oh, Jordan in chat says twice FCS All-American.
Oh, excuse us.
I'll add Short. I'll throw some weight behind Shorts.
Let's get the FCS guy up there.
Yeah.
Short.
I was trying to give
season.
Oklahoma somebody. We should probably do 2 episodes on this, don't you
He
think?
should. He's gone too far.
Let's split this into 2 episodes. We did 45 minutes on
I think so, too.
Not just
on
offense.
the offense.
Plus,
Yeah,
I
Yeah,
had
and
Zoe,
Danny's got to jump. So,
So we'll do the defense tomorrow, 11 a.m.
Sure.
and then push mailbag. Yeah, I think so.
Oh, we'll round it out. We'll add a couple mailbag questions. We'll finish up defense and we'll take care of business. Baby, this is show planning on the fly.
perfect.
Look at that.
Good
My
prediction.
favorite thing about our show is that we could do something like a transfer draft and then take an hour just to get through the offense.
So, I mean, like this is you couldn't do this on TV, right? The first take producers would be in your ear. HQ would be having a fit. But like behind the curtain, yesterday we're like, what should we do for tomorrow's show? We usually plan out about a month ahead, and we just had an open spot here, figuring some news would pop up, and like no real news has. And I was like, I think it was Chip's idea.
I don't think anybody else can match our depth of knowledge and our understanding to be able to give you an all-transfer, all-America team and actually discuss it and let you know all of the nominees. We're not just like spitting out 2 and then being able to hit print and get out of here. We are taking you behind the curtain. We are letting you know who barely made the cut, who fought for who, and we've got this all on record so that we can fight about it. When our player that we stood up for balled out, or when the one that we stood up for ends up being a total flop, we've got it on record so that we can own it. So I like it. So we'll be back on Thursday. We will do the defense for our preseason all transfer team. Also, we will tackle a couple mailbag questions. As Bud mentioned, you know, the best way to add a question to the big old bag of mail is to leave us a 5-star review. And then in that review, put your question. We will hit a couple mailbag questions tomorrow and then continue to roll with weekly mailbag editions throughout the offseason. You can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.